So good. Hey, so like I said, today we're taking up our miracle offering, and I made a great slide, which I'm really proud of. That looks like it's made in Photoshop, right? Like it looks extremely professional, but I made that in Pages on my Mac. So I was telling Byron that this week, sorry. Byron runs like a design marketing. I don't know what Byron really runs, but he runs an amazing company that does that sort of stuff. He offered me a job on the spot. I was like, look, Byron, I just can't, monopolizing those talents would be wrong. But so today we're talking about our miracle offering. And at the very start of this, I want to preface it by saying this is not a fundraising drive, right? This is not about raising money. We don't have one of those old school thermometers that we're going to color in as we get closer and closer to replacing the roof or whatever it is. Those things are fine, but that's not what our miracle offering is about. It is about gathering resource. It is about knowing that what we want to do, what God's calling us to do, that there is resource and funds that support that and endorse it. But those funds and those resources should be a result of hearts and faith gathered to a cause. So I want to start this by saying that throughout this whole talk today, I want you to be thinking about how can you partner with what we're doing. Because the truth is that if you're a part of this church, if you consider Equippers Church your home, you need to be all in with us. And I want to break down this idea of all in into two things. We've been talking about it for the last couple of weeks. We need to be all in terms of it takes all of us, and we need to be all in terms of it takes all of us, right? That is confusing, but we need to all of us be all invested. It takes every single one of us all invested, all giving something, not necessarily financially, although where your treasure is, there your heart is also. So finances is a really good way to get your heart involved. But we need to be in this if we know that God's going to do something, if we know that God's at work. I believe that by the end of this morning, in the next 30 minutes or so, God's going to convince you that we need to be all in and that you need to be all in. Is that all right? So good. Turn with me, if you have your Bible, to John chapter 2. I'm going to be reading from the Passion Translation. I said that when I was practicing it at home too, the Passage Translation. It is a passage. It's not the Passage Translation. The Passion Translation, it's Jesus at the wedding of Cana, and it says this. Now on the third day, there was a wedding feast in the Galilean village of Cana, and the mother of Jesus was there. Jesus and his disciples were all invited to the banquet, but with so many guests in attendance, they ran out of wine. And when Mary realized, she came to him, to Jesus, and asked, "They have no wine. Can't you do something about it?" Jesus replied, "My dear one, don't you understand that if I do this, it won't change anything for you, but it will change everything for me? My hour of unveiling my power has not yet come." Mary then went to the servers and told them, "Whatever Jesus tells you, make sure that you do it." Now there were 6 stone water pots standing nearby. They were meant to be used for the Jewish washing rituals. Each one held about 20 gallons or more. Jesus came to the servers and told them, "Fill the pots with water right up to the very brim." Then he said, "Now fill your pitchers and take them to the master of ceremonies." And when they had poured out their pitcher for the master of ceremonies to sample, the water became wine. When he tasted the water that became wine, the master of ceremonies was impressed, although he didn't know where the wine had come from, but the servers knew. He called the bridegroom over and said to him, "Every host serves his best wine first until everyone has had a cup or two, and then he serves the wine of poor quality. But you, my friend, you've reserved the exquisite wine until now." This miracle in Cana was the first of many extraordinary miracles Jesus performed in Galilee. This was a sign revealing his glory, and his disciples believed in him. Why don't you bow your heads with me and let's pray. God, I thank you for this moment as we gather together as your people. God, I thank you that it's not my ideas, that I'm not convincing anyone, but that you are speaking. God, I pray that your voice would be loud this morning. God, that you would do what I can't do, that you would speak to hearts. God, that we would know that in this moment we encountered your living word and that it does not return void. God, will we leave here knowing we met with you different than when we came in? In Jesus' name, amen. You know, it's interesting. Jesus often refers to the kingdom of heaven as a party. Right? Jesus loved to speak in metaphors. Jesus loved to use stories. And one of the main stories he used and other people used throughout the New Testament was of the kingdom of heaven like a party. But this is the only party, this is the only wedding party. He refers to it as a wedding party, not just a party, but a wedding feast. And this is the only wedding feast that we have a record of Jesus attending. But potentially after this, once the word got out about what he did at the wedding feast, he got a lot of invitations, right? And he was getting them, he was like, I know why you're inviting me, right? We don't know each other. You just want me to do the catering. I'm not going to come. But this is the only record that we have of Jesus attending a wedding feast. And so I think that there are three important things that I want to look at today: the why, the how, and the who of what Jesus did at this wedding feast and what it tells us about the kingdom of heaven. Right? If the kingdom of heaven is like a wedding feast, and this is a story of Jesus at a wedding feast, I think there's an important intersection here of what does the kingdom of heaven and Jesus look like in combination. See, so let's start with why. Why did this happen? The why, I think today, if we go to the next slide, is the church exists for a reason. Right, just in case you needed reminding this morning, a brief reminder, we exist for a reason. We're not gathered here today just for the sake of being here. We're not here out of habit. We're not here because we didn't have anything else to do on a Sunday morning. We're here because there's a mission. Right, the church does not have a mission. In fact, the mission has a church. The mission existed before the church existed, and the mission will continue to exist as the church changes its shape and form. The mission is what defines us, and we come together around it. And so here Mary is at this party, and she realizes that the wine has run out. She realizes that the wine has run dry and the party is ruined, and so she says to Jesus, they don't have any wine. Can't you do something about it? Some of us might be able to relate to this statement a little bit too well, right? Like, yeah, no, when I open the fridge and there's no wine left in the fridge, I pray to Jesus, right? I'm like, this is bad. This is a bad situation. Hopefully that's not true. Right, but she's not speaking just to the fact that there's no wine, that there's no refreshments. What she's really saying is the joy of this party. The essence of this celebration is gone. The party's going to be over. It's going to fall short. It's not going to be what it's meant to be. The joy is gone. The life is gone. The party is over. Jesus, can't you do something? See, and I think it's important that all of Jesus' life, we need to remember, can be viewed in the shadow of the cross, can be viewed in light of his death and resurrection. And it's interesting that John, who writes this account, he starts the narrative of the life and ministry of Jesus with a wedding. Right? Because John's gospel is all about the marriage of heaven and earth in Jesus. It's all about Jesus come to make things right, to mend things. It's about the divine meeting us. It's about God's purpose in creation is not just to make us and leave us, but that he wants relationship with us. That it's not about the separation of heaven and earth, but about this wonderful combining. And so John starts his gospel by saying that it happened on the third day, which is interesting because it's not actually unusual that a wedding happens on the third day. What was meant by the third day was a Tuesday, is according to the Jewish calendar, which starts on a Sunday, right? Sunday, Monday, Tuesday. He's saying it happened on a Tuesday, but he doesn't write it happened on Tuesday. He writes it happens on the third day. But in fact, it's not actually rare for a wedding to happen on a Tuesday in ancient Jewish culture. In fact, Tuesday is the standard day to be married. And the reason is because on Tuesday, the third day of creation, as it says in Genesis 1:10 and 1:12, was blessed twice. On the third day, God says that it was good twice. Every other day, he just says it once. But on the third day, he says it twice. And so Jewish custom believed that this day was doubly blessed. That this was a good day to do things that are important because God has blessed this day. And so people were like, man, we should get married on a Tuesday. It's a blessed day. The other side of it was just plain practical, right? Because you weren't allowed to travel on the Sabbath and you were meant to be at home on the Sabbath. And so if you're going to have a wedding and the wedding feast would go on for a couple of days, you didn't want to have it on a Friday, right? Because you have it on a Friday and then it's like, we have to leave right now because we have to get home for the Sabbath. Right, so if you have it on a Tuesday, then people could leave after the Sabbath, have a day traveling, arrive, have a couple of days in the wedding, at the wedding feast, and then get home in time for the Sabbath. It was just the most convenient day to have this sort of ceremony. So here we are, Tuesday. It's not a rare day. It's not an odd day to get married. And yet John says that they were married on the third day. On the third day, Jesus attends this wedding feast. See, I think what John's doing is he's not just saying that it's the third day for a sense of kind of time and place. He's pointing to the fact of what Jesus is on earth for. He's foreshadowing that this goes beyond wine at a wedding. And the way that this is driven home is in the fact that wine replaces water. Water, these jars which would have normally been used for purification, for a way of bringing you back to a zero sum of cleanliness from the debt of the sin that you've been walking in. You would ritually purify yourself to be a part of the celebration, but the purification would only last for a moment and you would be dirty again. And Jesus takes this moment of temporary purification and Jesus gives transformation. Jesus takes this ritual sacrifice, this ritual moment, and he gives a new life altogether. We come to Jesus for water, and he meets us in our thirst and gives us something that meets a deeper thirst. He quenches something within us. Jesus changing water to wine is designed to say that something is going to change. So here Jesus says he comes on the third day to bring life. He comes on the third day to this wedding in which the joy has run out, the grace has run out, the hope has run out, the party is dying out, in which something needs to happen. And his actions to us are a picture of what the church is meant to be. See, the why. The church exists for a reason. The reason that the church exists is that the party needs wine. The world needs heaven. I want to remind you of the reason that we're here today. We're not just here to meet our own need. We're not just here to feel good about ourselves, but each and every one of us in this room have been set apart and called to make a difference in the world. There's a place in which we fit, which we can make a change. There's a grace which we can step into. There's a hope which we can bring. There's a faith and a love which we can speak out. You know, it's interesting. I was listening to a podcast this week. I've been listening to a lot of podcasts lately because Ollie's not that great a conversationalist. And in one of these podcasts, it was a talk between Erwin McManus and Aaron McManus, who are pastors of a church over in LA called Mosaic. And Aaron is Erwin's son. And Erwin was talking about, he used to pray this prayer over Aaron every night, that he would live a life of faith, that he would be known by love, that he would speak hope, and that he would dream impossible dreams. You know, and I just think that I don't know if someone's prayed that over you every day of your life, but that's just as true for you. That you are called to live a life of faith, that you are called to be known by love, that you are called to speak hope, and you are called to be bold enough to dream impossible dreams in which we need God. See, we're made to make a difference. We're made to transform our worlds. We're made to bring wine to a party that needs it. We're made to bring heaven to earth. The world needs joy and love and hope and truth. The world needs the gospel. The world needs a miracle, and we're invited to be in it. So how? Right? How do we play a part? How does a miracle happen? We serve. Or to put it more bluntly, we put in the work. See, church needs all of us. It needs all of us, all involved, all giving what we can. It needs all of us praying. It needs all of us serving. It needs all of us worshiping. And I understand. If we're being honest with ourselves, the moment that we hear that, the thing that comes into our mind is like, do you know what I don't feel like doing? Work. I don't feel like doing work. Work sounds like, what's that word that work sounds like? Oh, work. It sounds like work, right? I don't like doing work. The only time I do work is when I get paid for work. And then at least I'm getting paid for it. You're asking me to do work, but you're not paying me. Correct, right? I'm not paying myself either, because the point is this is not about money. It's about following the call on our life, something that goes beyond finances, goes beyond having a need met in a moment. See, let me explain this. Jesus didn't feel like doing work either. Right? In fact, we know this because he says to Mary, "My dear one, don't you understand that if I do this, it won't change anything for you, but it will change everything for me. My hour of unveiling my power has not yet come." Other versions say, "Woman, why are you telling me this?" Right? That the nuance here is actually an Aramaic idiom. which is a great little phrase to say. But it essentially means, what will we have in common if I do this? What he's saying is, if I do this, it's going to change everything. Or if we take a moment and remember where Jesus is in his life, for Mary, this miracle won't change her life. But for Jesus, it will. For Jesus, this will be his first public miracle. This will be him stepping into his ministry. This will be him becoming who he's called to be. It will dramatically change his ministry from this moment on as the crowd see that he's not just another man. And to add to that, Jesus has just traveled 25 miles after being baptized. Right? Like, he's come to this party to relax. He's come to this party to celebrate. He's come to this party to take a bit of a load off. I'm kind of imagining Jesus is like, man, I'm going to start some things real soon. I'm going to have one last nice meal with my friends and family before everyone's asking me to do things, before there's all this expectation, before all of this pressure is on me. I'm just going to take a moment to just be before I step into what I'm called to. And there he is, and Mary's like, hey, I know who you are. I remember the angel told me, I've known for a while. I've kept my lid on this. Come on, Jesus, I raised you. You need to help us out. Jesus, would you turn this wedding around? Would you do something here? And Jesus knows that his life will forever change if he performs this miracle. It's fair to say that he probably didn't feel like turning water into wine. This isn't just a parlor trick. This isn't just a moment. This is the beginning of his ministry, of everything changing. See, let me say it this way. This miracle, this act, is the first step on Jesus' journey to the cross. And he knows it. This isn't just a moment to turn a wedding around. This is him beginning the path to what he knows he's called to do. Jesus probably didn't feel like doing it either, but he does. So here we are. We've got these 6 water jars. 6 in the Bible is often used to represent human effort. And as we already know, the story is heavy on imagery, right? All throughout it. The 6 water jars are used for ritual purification, and they're transformed by Jesus into wine used to celebrate a wedding. That's the whole picture. That's a summary of who Jesus is, that he comes and transforms what was ritual purification into celebration of the unification of us and God in a way that we could never earn or deserve. And so here Jesus says 6 is used in the Bible to represent the fullest extent of human effort. So before the miracle happens, the servants at the wedding have given their best. They've done what they can do. And Jesus calls us to do the same. But it's important to recognize that their efforts didn't forgive their sins. Their efforts didn't make them clean. Their efforts didn't transform them. They gave their best, but they still needed Jesus. Let me dive in a little bit into what it actually took to do this. If we go to the next slide, right? So we've got 6 water jars. 6 water jars, each holding 20 to 30 gallons. 1 gallon is about 3.78541 liters, as we all know, right? Because we've got those conversion systems just in our head. And so 20 to 30 gallons is about 75 to 115 liters, right? We all know the volumetric conversion. That means it's about 75 to 115 kgs worth of water. That's a lot of water, right? And so if there's 6 of these jars, we take the about middle, because it makes me feel good, of 100 liters per jar. That's 600 liters of water. That's 600 kilograms of water. Now let's say a bucket, right? Your average bucket carries about 10 kilograms of water. There wasn't a hose, there wasn't a tap in the building, right? We did not yet have that sort of advanced water delivery system. So to fill up the jars, you had to go to the well. Now let's say the well was close. Let's say it was only like a 10-minute walk. That would be 20 minutes there and back to fill up the jar, and then again and again and again and again. That would be about 60 trips to fill the jars, which would be 20 hours worth of walking back and forth to fill the jar. Right, see, here's the thing. We're not about one person filling up 6 jars on their own. This is such a great picture of the church, because if Jesus had said, hey, go fill up the jars, and there was just one person doing it, the wedding would have fallen over still. Right, 20 hours later, the servant would have been like, I finished, the jars are full, the jars are full, Jesus. And Jesus would have been like, yeah, and everyone's gone home. But cool, I was going to do a great miracle, that's fine, thanks. See, we're not about one person sweating it out, doing it all on their own for 20 hours. We're about forming a chain gang. We're about passing the bucket down the line to the well, passing the bucket back down the line to the jars. We're about working together to do together more than we could ever do on our own. 600 liters. It's about 800 bottles of wine. So we're talking about big things here. And to do that, it requires all of us all playing a part. See, how does a miracle happen? A miracle happens, if we go to the next slide, when we all play a part. We all have something to bring, and it takes all of us, because we're about water jars, not water bottles. See, Jesus says to them, fill the pots with water right up to the very brim. One of our values here at Equippers Church is excellence. Not because we're about perfection, but because we value progress. We want to fill the pots to the brim. We want to do the utmost that we can do so that when we take the water to Jesus, we're ready for the miracle. We're expectant for the miracle. We're honoring what he's going to do. We value the wine. And we do it because we don't want the party confined to our convenience. We don't want the party confined to our level of comfort. We want it to go wide and far. At our last team night, Pastor Sam spoke from Ephesians chapter 4, verses 11 to 16 in the New King James Version. I'll put it up on the screen. We all know it. And it says, and he himself gave some to be apostles, some prophets, some evangelists, and some pastors and teachers for the equipping of the saints for the work of the ministry. That's where we get our name. Right? We are for the equipping of the saints, for the edifying of the body of Christ, till we all come to the unity of the faith and of the knowledge of the Son of God, to a perfect man, to the measure of the stature of the fullness of Christ, that we should no longer be children, tossed to and fro and carried about with every wind of doctrine by the trickery of men and the cunning craftiness of deceitful plotting, but speaking the truth in love, may grow up in all things into him who is the head, Christ, from whom the whole body, joined and knit together by what every joint supplies, according to the effective working by which every part does its share, causes growth of the body for the edifying of itself in love. We are all the church. We might have different roles to play, different parts to occupy, but we're all essential to the party, and we are corporately who we are individually. See, the question is, what are we bringing? What do we contribute? If we want to see the church move in certain areas, are we leading the charge, or are we hanging back, waiting for the church to do it, forgetting that we are the church? You know, a couple of weeks ago, Pastor Helen singled out this word, joined. It's prophetic, not just for this church, but for the churches in this region. That this idea of joined, that the join between us, that the meeting between us is important, and that God's doing something in it, that it's in the joints between us that God is working in significant ways. You know, and Em and I were reminded quite practically this week of how important a joint is. Even a weird one at the end of your body that attaches a smelly foot, right? Every single part of us is important. And when the ankle goes, all of a sudden you can't walk around anymore. All of a sudden you're in bed. All of a sudden you can't move. See, take out one ankle and suddenly everything else doesn't work. You might just feel like an ankle. You might feel like, man, I don't know what I contribute. I'm just this part tacked on to the... Without you, we can't be who we're called to be. We can't move as we're called to move without you. And here's the thing. You will never find satisfaction on your own. There's no ankles separate to the body being like, I just love being an ankle on my own. And there's no part-time ankles. There's no ankles on the weekend. See, when we're a part of the body, we're part of the body all the time. We're called to be all in. See, so number one, why? The church exists for a reason. The party needs wine. Number two, how? How does a miracle happen? It happens when we all play a part, when we all do what we can. It takes all of us. And number three, who receives the miracle? Feels kind of obvious, right? The guests receive the miracle. Like Jesus turns the water to wine, and the guests drink the wine. They're like, this is fantastic wine. Thank you so much, Jesus. Jesus is like, no problem. It's vintage me, 2000 BC minus the 31 years. Anyway, it's a great wine. You're welcome, right? The guests got the flash wine. They benefited. But did they receive the miracle? They benefited. But did they receive the miracle? They got the benefit of the miracle, but they never actually knew that a miracle happened. The master of ceremonies is presented with the wine, and it says that he never knew what happened, but it says that the servers did. Right? The guests, their world wasn't changed, their faith wasn't built. They left having tasted good wine, but the servants left having seen heaven touch earth. The servants left having seen something change. The servants received the miracle. The ones who saw Jesus transform water into the wine, they were the ones who saw the Messiah's ministry start. They received the miracle. See, there are two types of people in John chapter 2. There are the guests, and they come in, and they get refreshed, and they have a good time, and they leave, and that's fantastic. But the servants, they come, and they serve, and they leave blessed, having had their lives changed. See, we can come on a Sunday. We can sit in our seats. We can sing our songs. We can listen to the sermon. We can drink a coffee, and we will leave refreshed. We will leave being blessed. We'll leave with the benefit of the miracle. God will be here. God will turn water into wine. God will have heaven touch earth. We'll taste something of heaven, but there's actually more for us. We're not just called to be refreshed. It's not just that the church needs all of us involved, that we're all a part of the body, but we personally need to be all in. We all need to be in church. We need to not just be guests, but to be servants. Because when you choose to step up, when you choose to step in and contribute, you walk away with a different level of blessing. Because the servants always see the miracle. So maybe ask yourself, just as I get Jack up, when was the last time you saw water turned into wine? When was the last time you saw God move? When you saw a miracle happen? When you saw something and you went, man, God is a part of this. God is in this. God is moving. God is doing something. Maybe ask yourself, when did I last bring what I could? When did I last bring my 6 pots and saw God do more with them than I could ever imagine? Because here's the thing. I want to build some faith in you this morning because there are miracles all around us. You know, I was talking to Pastor Mateale from Tonga a couple of weeks ago. And he was telling me about some of the amazing miracles that they've seen in Tonga. And I just want to share one with you, if that's all right. A cousin of Mateale's was in hospital in Tonga. And it had gotten so bad that he was in a coma. And the coma had gotten to such an extent that the doctors were saying, hey, friends and family, you need to come and say goodbye. We don't think this is going to work out. We don't think this is turning around. And so friends and family were coming and they were saying goodbye. And Rhea Stevenson, who some of us know, came. And she walks into the room intending to be there for the family, to love on them. She's a cousin as well. Tonga's a small place. Right? And so she's there to say goodbye. But she walks into the room and something in her just starts to rise up. And she's like, why? Why are we saying goodbye? Why are we permitting this to happen if we don't believe that it should? And she says to the family, can we just, I know we've prayed, but can we just pray again? Can we just believe again that God's going to do something? Can we just know that we did everything that we could, that we bought our 6 pots, that we gave what we could? And so they start to pray in this hospital room in Tonga. And this man lying in this bed in a coma that the doctors say he's not going to wake up from, he starts to stir. He starts to move. He starts to open his eyes, and then he starts to recognize people in the room. The doctors come rushing in. They say this shouldn't have happened. He's now in such a state where he couldn't be treated for what was going on in Tonga, but he was too unstable to be transported to Auckland where they could treat him. But now he's stable enough, so they put him in a medvac helicopter and they take him across the ocean to Auckland, and now he's in the hospital in Auckland. He's getting the treatment that he needs. Riri's visiting him every day. The church in Auckland is supporting him because miracles happen. You know, I was talking to Pastor Tico from Christchurch, and he had a man in his church who was diagnosed with prostate cancer. Now, this man did something that I do not endorse or recommend. He got diagnosed with cancer, and he doesn't tell his family. He goes to his insurance, and he ups his life insurance, and he starts getting everything sorted so that when he passes away, his family will be cared for. A couple of weeks after his diagnosis, he goes to Shout Conference with his wife. He's there at Shout Conference, and Dr. Lavinia is sharing her and her husband's testimony about how her husband's heart had a hole and it was healed. They went to the doctor, they saw the dye passing through the hole in his heart. She's a medical doctor, she got it. They went back to see how he was going. She went with her phone to video the dye so that she could explain it to their family. She started videoing. The doctor said, hey, look, something weird has happened. Here's your husband's heart. The dye's not exiting anymore. The hole has been healed. And she says, that's so odd because a month ago we had Dr. Michael Maiden in, and before we even knew about the hole in this heart, he prophesied over my husband that God was going to do something in his heart. Dr. Lavinia shares this testimony and says, if you need healing, would you stand to your feet and let's pray for you. This man stands in Shout Conference. His wife is sitting next to him and has no idea about the diagnosis. She thinks that he's standing because he's got a sore back. She puts her hand on his back and begins to pray. He goes home, visits the doctor again. The doctor said, I don't know what to tell you. The cancer that we saw before is entirely gone. He goes to church the next week, stands in front of his church family, his wife in the congregation, and she finds out that her husband had cancer and was cured from cancer in the middle of a church service. Again, not how I recommend communicate those sorts of things to loved ones, but God's moving. You know, this morning, Pastor Jordan is over the hill in Masterton, and he's over there celebrating with them because in May of this year, Pastor Matt Cornfin was diagnosed with a type of cancer called Burkitt's lymphoma, an aggressive cancer. He was diagnosed, he had a sore back. They were trying to figure out what it was. They thought it was a hernia. They figured out what it was, and the next day, he was in chemotherapy. From then till now, he's been in consistent chemotherapy, and 2 days ago, the doctor said to him, we've done the scans, we've looked at it, and your cancer is completely gone. You're in full remission. We don't expect it to come back. Come on, I'm telling you that God is moving, that miracles are happening. See, the question is will we be guests who just drink the refreshment of hearing what happened somewhere else? Or will we be the servants who get involved, who say, hey, we want to be a part of this. We want to be in this. See, we've had a miracle right here. Right? So most of you know that we're in the process of buying a building in Porirua. And for those of you who are just looking in and thinking, wow, that's great that we've got a building in Porirua, that's amazing. It's just refreshing. But there are people in this region, there are people in this country who've been praying for a church to establish a foothold in the city of Porirua for decades, who see this and they say, that's not just happenstance, that's just not just a good thing happening, that's God's provision. God is working, God is doing something. See, what I want to encourage you is God's moving. God's doing things. We've had miracles happen, but it's the servants who see them happen. You can be involved in miracles. And just as the team comes to the stage, today I'd like to ask you to consider partnering with us as we take up our miracle offering. As we go all in, as we commit to what we believe God is doing. Like I said before, it's not about money, but where your treasure is, there your heart is also. I think if we're invested, then we believe. And I don't want this to be a spur of the moment sort of thing. I'm not asking you necessarily to fill out the form now. You can take it home and pray about it if you want. But I do want to ask you to be all in with us. To be all in with us in your serving. To be all in with us in your faith. To be all in with us in your prayer. To be all in with us in your worship. That we would know that we're pursuing something that God's doing. And I want to let you know practically you can give today or you can pledge and you can write that on the form. And we can do that as well. Because we as the church, we exist for a reason. The party needs wine. The world needs joy and love and hope and faith. The world needs the gospel. And a miracle happens when we all play a part. We all have something to bring, and it takes all of us. Moving 600 leaders is a team activity, and we are all called because who we are individually is who we are corporately. And when we serve, when we give, when we go beyond ourselves, as we serve, we receive the miracle. We see God do the impossible, and we get to glory in what He does. We're all in. all of us, each of us, not holding back, but also all of us all in, not just a passionate few. We're all in. It takes all of us, all involved. As we finish, I just want to leave you with this quote from Oswald Chambers. It says this, maybe close your eyes, open your hearts. The call of God is not just for a select few, but for everyone. Whether I hear God's call or not depends on the condition of my ears. And exactly what I hear depends upon my spiritual attitude. See, in a minute, we're going to worship together. And as we do, the hosts are going to collect the forms in a minute. And I'd like you to think, and if you'd like to take away, like I said, please do that. But you'll also see on those miracle offering forms a space to write in what you're trusting God for. The miracles that you're trusting God for. Because here's the thing. We're not just asking you to be all in with us. We want to be all in with you. We want to be all in believing for breakthrough in the places where you need breakthrough. We want to be all in believing for miracles where you need miracles, so that we can stand with you in prayer, so that we can stand with you in the midst of the storm, so that we can stand with you and believe that God is doing something, so that when God comes through, we're not just guests in your miracle, but we're servants. We can see the water transformed into wine. Why don't you stand to your feet? I'm going to pray. Then we're going to worship together. God, I thank you that you're here. God, I thank you that we don't do any of what we do out of a sense of obligation or ritual. We're not about purification via water, God, but we're about transformation by your blood. God, as we worship you, as we bring our hearts to you, would we be all in, God? Would you speak to us in this time of worship, that we would see where you're calling us to go, that we would know that it takes all of us and that we need to give all of who we are, God. God, thank you that the servants see the miracle. In Jesus' name, let's worship.